And you know something? You better win that battle. And if you don't, you'll be going downhill ever since. And I like to suggest from at least some psychological background that it is far less damaging when I talk about how to do it and the way to do it. It's far less damaging to have a brief, under control encounter with a child who's done something he knows is wrong, where they are spanked, loved, prayed with, restored, and their conscience is clean, is a lot more psychologically less damaging than yelling and screaming and how many times and why did you do that and what's wrong with you and go to your room. And a kid goes to his room, there's no resolution, his conscience is never cleared, and it ends up with one little boy or one little girl mad at his mom and dad here and a parent who never makes any resolution. And so why are we surprised when it happens again? There's never closure. So with that, let me suggest that there is a way that you can spank your children. Now, I'm assuming that, you know, there's a lot of common sense in the room, and that at very, very tiny early ages that, you know, you're going to use your... And I'm going to tell you that you never lay your hand on a child, ever. In our home, we had a little wooden spoon. I want my kids, when I held up the wooden spoon, to know, ooh, I don't want the wooden spoon, okay? But I'm never, the hand that loves, caresses, prays, and holds them should never be the thing that touches or hurts them. And the other is, you never lay a hand on a kid, ever. I mean, you never slap a kid, you never hit it, you never, if you do that, go get help. Here's what I'm talking about. Biblical discipline. Remember, it's discipline. I'm not angry. I'm under control by the grace of God. And so let me give you 7 steps to discipline when you have to use actions. First is it should always come with a clear warning. A kid should never be grabbed in the arm and be, no. They ought to know, when I do this, this happens. Very few things are we going to discipline, but when this happens, it's going to happen. Clear warning. Second is establish responsibility. And by the way, this is mostly in those early years where what you're doing is you're laying down the railroad tracks. I rarely had to spank my kids. Now, I had a couple that we spent a little more energy in the early years because they just couldn't quite get it. But it also helped the younger kids realize, I don't think I want to go that route. But what you don't want to do is say, okay, why did you do that? How many times have I told you? I said, don't go in that house. It's the 3rd time this week. You went in that house again. Why did you do that? That is a stupid question. That is a theologically stupid question. So why do you sin? I mean, what do you want your kid to say? 7, 8-year-olds, I'm sorry, Mommy and Daddy, I know I'm born in Adam, and according to Psalm 51, it's in my innermost being, and the flesh wages war against the spirit, and I think I gave into the flesh, and you know, it's a fallen world system. Don't ask your kid why. You know why. What you want him to do is own responsibility. You're calm, you're under control, and then you sit down and you say, what? Not why. What did you do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. Everyone was going in there, and I was only in there for a minute with stuff. What did you do wrong? I only went into... Son, let me give you one more chance here. What did you do wrong? I went in with Jeremy and Johnny in the house. What did I tell you? You said I wasn't allowed, I couldn't under any circumstances. So what did you do wrong? I disobeyed you. Got it? See, I'm not trying to punish him, I'm trying to help him learn. People never learn unless they own their responsibility. And the goal, by the way, the reason, if to discipline well, it takes time. So you warn them, they own their responsibility, and then you always avoid embarrassment. You don't do it in front of the other kids. You don't yank them out of a booth in a restaurant and start this kind of stuff that I've seen parents. You don't yell and scream at your kids. That's damage. So in our house, it was either our bedroom or their bedroom. Quiet, just the 2 of us. And then you communicate grief. I want my children to know that instead of anger, that's a punishment response. They get that. I'm very disappointed. And then I want them to feel early on, I trust you. I love you. I mean, don't we let you go lots of places? Haven't we done this? I care about you. Violated my trust. And authentically, if it happens, if they see some tears flowing down your face, when you know that they have broken your heart, that's what discipline's about. When you disobey God, when I disobey God, he doesn't rage his fist and say, Ingram, boy, that guy's making me crazy down there. It breaks his heart. All the punishment that I deserve, he already placed on Christ. Your kids need to see that their lack of obedience, it breaks your heart because you love them and you want what's best. And then after you communicate grief, this is sort of a very, very practical aspect, but never reach back and swing at your kids or hurt them. You know, I always had them kind of get right on the bed and lean over, and the key is a flick of the wrist. The goal is a sting. You don't want to do any damage whatsoever, but with just a wooden spoon, you flick your wrist like that, boom, boom. I'll tell you what, you want it to sting and hurt a lot, do absolutely no damage, and it ought to produce, okay? If it produces, then however many they got, they need one more, okay? Or, and you know, so I watch some mothers, I won't say any in the audience that I know well, but, you know, like, okay, I know this is important. If it doesn't hurt, it doesn't work. That is not loving. Now, there is a time, too, by the way, especially ladies. You know, they get bigger and bigger, and it's 12 and 13. It's less and less and less, and you rarely ever have to do it then, but sometimes there's a biggie when you need to. My wife knew it was time to stop spanking one of our sons when she did the deal, and he just looked at her and started laughing. That means they're too old to spank, okay? But do you see, it's under control. The goal is discipline. You're not angry. They understand what they've done wrong. They bend over and then, okay? And they get it, and especially when they're really small. And when they start hitting preteens, you're probably just about done if you've done it well early on. Now and then you still have to. And then what I found is after that, I really wanted to make sure that my kids got a chance to repent. And so when they were real small, I just let them sit in my lap, and they were crying. I just let them cry for a little bit. And then after they cried for a little bit, then I would say, are you ready to talk to Dad? You ready to talk to God? Because I taught them little by little. Are you ready to talk to God? Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, why don't we talk to God together? Okay, what do you want to say to God? God, I'm sorry. Okay, what do you got to coach him. What are you sorry about? I'm sorry, I'm bad. No, that's not, you're not bad. You're very special. What are you sorry about? What did you do? I went in with Jeremy and Johnny in the house. Okay, tell God that. God, I'm sorry. Okay, what are you sorry about? I'm sorry, I disobeyed Dad and Mom and went into the house and I wasn't supposed to. Okay, what do you need to ask? Ask him to forgive you. Will you forgive me? And then he's in your arms, or she's in your arms, and you say, dear God, thank you for this precious little boy. Thank you for this little girl who's mine. How wonderful you made her. Thank you that she learned something today, and help her to remember. Give her strength to remember, to do what she knows is right. And thank you today, the moment she owned up to her, I don't usually use the word sin, but what she did wrong, that like a big eraser, you wiped it all off the board, and she's absolutely clean before you. And then after we get done praying, then I just put my arms around and hug them, and usually try and do something fun. Because number 7 is unconditional love. And here's what I want to tell you. The most intimate, deep times probably I've had with any of my kids have been after a time of disciplining. This is not a crude, big person with a big club who's angry getting kids by corporal punishment. This is using the rod God's way to bring about actions that will deter destruction. I got an email from a lady who had taught this in our church. She said, recently I've shied away from spanking, even though all my other discipline measures with our 7-year-old are not working. That tells you that maybe that's a good thing to try. She says, I've been exhausted by the confrontation and the drama that's often associated with disciplining, but your message was the kick in the pants that I needed to do was right before God and to be more loving to my son. Thank you. This morning during school, during our time of school, his attitude really stunk. He was argumentative, disobedient. He was clearly challenging my authority. And then he began to pick on his little brother. Well, we did what you said. We went upstairs, went through the process. 2 quick stings later, he was sobbing and repenting in my arms and apologizing. I held him, and then he said, Mama, I'm sure glad they made wooden spoons. We prayed, and he snuggled back into my arms. The rest of our day has been peaceful and without the arguments and disobedience we've been experiencing recently. Thank you for the reminder I needed to return to the courage to discipline. It doesn't sound like an out-of-control parent, does it? Unless you think we're using only anecdotal evidence, this is in the Santa Cruz paper, one of the most liberal communities in all of America. And it's a study done, it says, study, childhood spanking leaves no permanent scars. Occasional mild spanking of young children are okay, and they will not create any lasting harm that is carried into adolescence, according to a study released Friday. Such discipline does not hurt youngsters' social or emotional development, the researchers reported. The study was being presented at a meeting in San Francisco of the American Psychological Association. Okay? A lot of us have bought into a bad model of spanking and assumed, because we've never heard how to do it right, that we don't do it at all. And we have ongoing conflict. Some of your kids need you to lovingly draw some boundaries and then let them cross them. And if you're consistent for a couple weeks, you'll just find they'll have a little clean conscience. They'll know where they're at. They'll feel a lot more love. And you don't have to live with all that conflict. Does it make sense?